Valar Morghulis.
Valar Duhai.
Welcome to Southside Westeros, where we explore the world of Game of Thrones. From the Fist of the First Man to the catacombs of the Red Keep, no secrets will be safe from us. Enter and forever be changed.
There is only one God, and his name is death. And there is only one thing we say to death. Not today.
Hello and welcome back to Southside Westeros. I'm Deepaw, your master of whispers, and thank you for joining me through this journey through Westeros. Now, our journey today lands us at the gates of Riverrun, and we're going to talk about Lord Walder Frey. He is the Lord of the aforementioned Riverrun and the Lord Paramount of the Trident. He's the head of House Frey and the former vassal of House Tully. And this is going to come into play later on in the podcast. Because, just like the Starks, he also betrayed them. Now, Walder Frey is the Lord of the Crossing and the head of House Frey. Again, he was a vassal for the Tullys of the Riverlands. His house is noted for its overwhelming fertility, okay? I'm putting this as nice as I can because he has over 100 descendants. Almost everyone in the Riverlands is somehow related to him. So he's the flip side of the coin from Crastus, who we're going to get into in a few podcasts down the road. But he's the flip side of that. He's an old guy. He's a little horny toad, is the best way I can describe it. Now, he rules the Twins and all the surrounding lands. And why he's important is because he controls a very strategic crossing over the Green Fork. Now, over the years, he built a great stone bridge and the castle around it that would control the crossing. And he made a fortune charging people just to cross it. He was married, from what we can tell, 7 times. And at the time of the show, he's almost 90. Which, I got to be honest, for a guy almost 90 back then, that was an accomplishment. And to be 90 and still be somewhat spry is also one, even though he's a deplorable character and disgusting. He has been referred to as the Liege Lord. And in some circles, they called him the late Lord Frey. Because he delayed his assistance during Robert's Rebellion and showed up after the war was already run. So it's giving you an idea of who this man is. He's a man of opportunity, and he's a man who will do very little and command much. But I don't think his actions were as wretched as played out. And I'll go into that. Now we started season 1. And Catelyn Stark, who from her lineage, meets with a knight and a group of men of House Frey at that inn. And she asks about Lord Walder's health. This is the normal things they do, lords and ladies do with each other to kind of make idle chatter. The knight tells her he's fine. He's getting to his 90th birthday, and he's taking a new wife. That's when Tyrion kind of laughed at it, right? That's where we first kind of get into him. So when Robb Stark's army arrives at the Twins to march south, Robb needs to cross the river to gain a tactical advantage over the Lannister army. As a Tully bannerman, Walder Frey had been called up, but in true fashion, he had delayed going until he saw which side had the advantage. Now, this is where he's smart, because he delays it just enough to where he gets the most with the least amount of effort, but where he doesn't enrage his allies, just slightly annoys them. But because of that bridge that he owns, he's an integral part of the whole system of Westeros. And you cannot be at odds with him. It would be very costly. Now that Riverrun has been besieged by the Lannisters, Frey then wondered why he should risk their fury. When he saw what happened, he knows that his men aren't really fighting men. They just have numbers and they have a bridge. And he knows this. So this is where he's smart. And this is where those 90 years come into play. Because for a man to survive that long then, think about it. He'd have to be very, very smart. Now, Kat and Robb, they're at odds because she keeps trying to usurp his position. She can't get past the fact that she's his mother, and she can't look at him as the king of the North. And she tells Robb that Walder Frey is slippery and not to be trusted, which is true, despite the allegiance he had with her father. Remember, he betrayed them. But fearing that Walder would imprison Robb and sell him to the Lannisters, Kat volunteers to negotiate with him. Despite the warnings from Robb, not only Robb, but Roderick, Great John, the Umbers, and Theon, all of them have known this, that this guy is untrustworthy, but she stated that she knew him since she was a child and she can get through to him. This again, and I've referred to this in past podcasts, this again where Kat makes catastrophic errors and she doesn't know her place, especially in this society. Kat, all that power that you try to push out into the world, that you try to exude into the world, only works in the gates of Winterfell. Doesn't work out here. And you see that time and time again. Now she enters the twins, and she finds Walder with all his sons, grandsons, bastards, everyone. And they all, every time you see him, he's in this hall eating and drinking and making merry. And I'm going to tell you, I didn't see any windows. Not many. So it was a little funky probably in there. Just a side note. Now, two of his sons remind him who Kat is, and that there's a certain level of respect and courtesy that he's supposed to show her. Her being the daughter of his liege lord. And Walder agrees to her request and kind of dismisses them, and including his new 15-year-old wife, while they negotiate, who I think was one of his daughters. Now, the alliance was formed in return for that permission, though, and the service of the troops. Robb had to marry one of his daughters or granddaughters. His choice. Now remember, Walder Frey is not a handsome man. And most of these children are possibly inbred. So they're not attractive. And Robb, being the oldest of Winterfell and the best at everything, as John referred to him, he had his choice of any woman. And this was a tremendous step down for him. Now, additionally, Arya, when recovered, would have to marry Waldron. Now, this was a terrible deal, but she had to do what she had to do. Now, Robb must also take another one of his sons as a squire. And Robb consents to it. He consents to this match. This is an important part of this. So when you look at Frey and what he did later on, remember this part right here. Robb consented to the match, even after his mother indicated that Walder's daughters were not attractive. So what does that mean? That means, or that meant, that even though she made this deal, it was a sucker's bet. And in a way, she was trying to talk him out of it. Again, showing her inexperience, not knowing her place, and not understanding, get this, not understanding how all of this works, because the world does not bow to the Lady of Winterfell, only Winterfell. Now, the next time we deal with the Freys, we go to season 3. In response to Robb's plea for men to help him capture Castle Rock. He's in a plea. He's desperate at this point. Desperate. And Lord Walder sends Lothar and Black Walder, who come into play later on, to Riverrun to discuss the terms of a new alliance with him. However, Lord Walder demands Harrenhal, as well as the marriage between Edmure and his daughter Rosalind. So he wants more now. He's seeing his position. He hasn't said he wouldn't help. He hasn't said that. But he wants more. And anyone in this position, whether you're in business, personal, or whatever, when you see a possible ally, but a possible negotiation adversary in front of you, and you have the upper hand, you're going to take advantage of it. Because you'd be a fool not to. Why? Because if the roles were reversed, he would do it. Now, when the king in the north and his entourage do arrive, Lord Walder offers them his hospitality, but cannot keep himself from mocking Robb over the broken oath, insulting Queen Talisa right to her face. Later, he oversees the wedding of Edmure and Rosalind and the feast. Now, look at this here. Robb has already gone back on his word. He already crossed. He got everything from him for the most part. And he already went back on his word. And then shows up after you've gone back on your word, wanting more. So this was where Robb's inexperience came in. Because you didn't understand your adversary. You didn't understand the slight that you did to this man and how you made him look. He's already a laughingstock for the way he lives his life and what he does. But this right here, no. This would have put him on par with Tywin Lannister's father. Now, once those newlyweds retired to bed, he had the hall sealed and gives the cue to slaughter the Starks. He watches and drinks as they kill Robb's wife, her unborn child, Robb's bannermen. Crossbows fly everywhere. Lothar was actually the one that killed the queen. And in a desperate bid to save her son again, Catelyn takes Lady Joy hostage, as if Walder Frey cares what happens to a woman. And then says, I will take no vengeance. Weakness, 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 weakness. Cat, you weren't getting out of there. This is where that Lady of Winterfell betrayed you. They just killed the queen. They're not letting you out of there. Oh, I promise I'll take no vengeance until I get back to the north, where I have thousands and thousands of men who already don't like me as it is, and I've just killed their king, but I'm really going to let you out of here. Nah, not happening. And he's very hypocritical when he faults Catelyn for allowing her son to break an oath. She swore to him that he would keep, even though he had openly expressed his indifference toward the oath he swore to her father and had now just broken in his promise. So, again, I don't like Frey. Frey is not a pleasurable character to me. But I understand what happened here. These are two oath breakers that stood in front of each other. One understood what was happening here. That was Walder Frey. One didn't. That was Robb. Now, he swore the protection of his guests, and this comes in later on. You slaughtered guests that you invited into your house. You lulled them into a comfortable being, fed them, plied them with wine, and then turned on them. But Catelyn, still desperate, she's a mother, she's desperate, she's hysterical. She threatens to cut his wife's throat if he doesn't comply. Walder shrugs. He doesn't care. It's a woman. It's a 15-year-old woman. I just met her. What do I care? But that's when Robb is then killed by Roose Bolton. And again, we kind of saw this happening because he had chainmail on. Who wears chainmail to dinner? He sealed an alliance with him by marrying Walder, who Robb should have married, because he should have kept his word. Now, Lady Joy is killed by Catelyn anyway, and then Black Walder kills her. Now, before we go on any further, I want to have a side discussion here. I want to show you the difference between Ned and Robb. Now, in the Ned podcast, I made a lot of accusations against Ned, and that made some of you upset. And that's okay. I wanted to get a reaction out of you and to see how you felt. And I do believe that podcast. I do still stand by the fact that he was an honorable fool, and his honor betrayed him. But in this situation, if Robb was honorable and married Walder, he would have had the total disposal of the Frey army. And that would have turned the tides in the war. Ned Stark, if he was in that position and a promise was made, would have married Walder without a second thought, regardless of who he loved, regardless of who he met. He would have been honorable. He would have done what he was supposed to. And in this situation here, it would have been enough for him to win the war and to take out the Lannisters. But because Robb wasn't honorable and didn't stick by a promise, an oath, which was a big thing back then, that's what led to his death. Now, again, these are two oath breakers. So why is one better than the other? Because the Starks are painted in a better light than the Frey? They want you to hate the Frey. They show you not one redeemable quality of Walder Frey, not one. So they want you to hate him. But I want you to see that they're both oath breakers. They're both liars, and they both went back on their word. The problem was the Starks were playing in an arena they weren't prepared to play in. Now, yeah, you're going to say, well, they were betrayed. How were they supposed to know? What has he done before? He's betrayed Tullys before. They already knew. Robb already knew because he told his mother not to go. Theon already knew because he told Cat not to go. The Karstarks already knew because he told Cat not to go. Do you see the pattern here? They knew what they were dealing with this guy. It was his arrogance. And see, and that's what really killed Robb, his arrogance. The arrogance that made him go back on the oath. The arrogance that made him not understand that you have to give your men what you want. He lost half of his force. And then the arrogance of showing up here and putting yourself in a position to be killed, not only you, but your wife, your queen, and your unborn child. There's a common theme among these Stark men. There's a common theme among the progeny of Ned. A little thick-headed. They're rich kids, though. I want to remind you of that. Regardless of how tough it is and where they have to poop and the fact that they have no refrigerator, they're still rich kids. And rich kids sometimes lack common sense. All right? So, for his part in what was referred to as the Red Wedding, Walder was granted Riverrun and the protection from the Northerners by Tywin Lannister. The next morning, he and Bolton gloat over their victory. Now, Bolton, he's a smart man, and he always was a smart man. His one problem was Ramsay. But that was destined to happen. He had to use Ramsay for what he used him for, but Bolton's own behavior came back to haunt him. And we'll discuss that in the House of Bolton. But he's concerned at this point because he understands that the Tullys escaped the massacre and they're going to come back. They got a lot of respect. They got a lot of bannermen, and they got a lot of people that look at them dearly. Frey is undisturbed, though. You know why? He's 90. He knows what's happening. He crushed them. He crushed the resistance, and he has the winner at his back. So he thinks. And he had contempt for Robb. He called him a stupid boy and drinks a toast to him. While Bolton kind of sums up what I just said and talks about his political inexperience and how he didn't listen to him. See, again, you have to understand, war is completely different. This is not the song of sonnets and fire and, ooh, Lord, and all that. No, this is war. Like Bronn said, men poop themselves, men die. This is war. The most honorable don't win. The most vicious win. But you got to be honorable to get everybody on your side. Shameful. Now, we don't see him again till season 4. And he's very quickly we see him in season 4. Not long at all. And he and the rest of the house, Frey, are in the hall. And they're talking about the Red Wedding and their parts in it and how their hatred for the North. And since the Riverlands have fallen into disarray and lawlessness since they were granted to the Freys by the Lannisters, none of his house vassals accept Lord Walder as their new liege lord. Why would they? He slaughtered his guests in his house. See, this is the fallback, of course, of what he did. I get it. You know, I get why you did it, and I get the reasons, but you can't forget the fallout of that Red Wedding. And I think Walder didn't even realize, while being used to being a deplorable character that most people look down upon, he didn't realize how bad the backlash was, and he didn't realize the state of the Lannisters, that this would be a fleeting victory for a very short time. And he would unfortunately not live to see it, but it happened very shortly after he left. One farmer avows Walder himself committed sacrilege by sharing bread and salt with the Starks and Tullys before slaughtering them, and that he will burn in the 7th hell. Now, season 6 is where it all comes to a head. His dominion over the Riverlands has weakened when Brendan Tully, Edmure Tully's uncle, and the veteran of the War of Ninepenny Kings. Remember that this is in the book, but I encourage you to look at the War of Ninepenny Kings. A lot of great stuff in there, a lot of great meat and potatoes, and it'll give you an idea of where some of these characters who we saw in the show came from and what the stuff that made them who they were. Now, the Tullys reclaimed Riverrun from the Freys relatively easy. And what remained was the remnants of House Tully's armies. Now, Walder learns of the capture of Riverrun, and he's not going to get up and do anything. And there's a subsequent rising of the other Riverland houses against Frey. All they needed was the Tullys to show a spark, and that was enough for everyone to speak their mind, which is everyone hates the Freys. Hates them. And he learns about this from his two sons, Lothar and Walder. And this sends him into a fury. And as usual, he accosts them for allowing Brynden to escape the Red Wedding in the first place, and he demands that they take back Riverrun right away, and to do so, they will use the one person they've kept alive, Edmure, as a hostage. Now, one would wonder, why did they ever leave Edmure alive? You slaughtered everyone else. What's the sense of leaving this guy? You kind of see that he has no respect. There's many scenes that show this, from the last scene where he tried to be king to when he couldn't shoot the flaming arrow. There's so many. So what was the sense of keeping him? It had nothing to do with him. I would tell you, they kept him alive to somehow keep the Tullys at bay. Because the Tullys' name garnered such respect that they can get an army together and take out the Freys relatively easy, as long as they can do it without the Lannisters. And so that was why. But he tells them to go show Brynden the knives they used to kill Talisa, horrible, and Catelyn. He raged that he knows the other Riverlands are laughing at him, because they are. Not laughing, disgusted with you, it's all the same. And despite his age, he will not die until he chokes out their laughter. Now, he's becoming unhinged at this point. And it's easy to see, but it's not easy to see. Because what's really happening here? This man who is a deplorable man, and who is not revered for his many shortcomings. I'll say that. From the sleeping with his daughters to the debauchery of bastards and sons, to the smell, to everything. They're just people that people would prefer not to deal with. And they're viewed as beneath most of the others in their group. They're also viewed as probably undeserving of the amount of power they have just because they own the bridge. So these are all the things that Lord Walder knows. So even though you can stand there in your great hall and eat all the food and sleep with all the women, you know that you're a fraud. And this is where that's coming out now. The fraud. I've done everything I can to gain some legitimacy in my mind, because all the moves were disgusting. So no one's going to respect those. They're going to fear the people behind you, but they're not going to fear you because you didn't do it like a man. You didn't take them out properly. You brought him in, like he said, gave him bread and salt, and then stabbed him in the back. So yes, they're laughing. Even the Boltons, even the Lannisters, everyone laughs at them. So this is a chance for him, I think, to establish power, to show that he's a force to be reckoned with. So that's why he sends them over there. He wants them to bring some type of legitimacy to the House Frey, but their failure as a house is his failure as a leader. These are your sons. Everything they know, you supposedly taught them. So if they're no good, Lord Frey, my friend. All right? Now, during the Feast of the Twins, following the defeat of House Tully with the help of the Lannisters, of course, if you remember, Jaime Lannister had to come in and took it over like that, while the Freys were pretty much begging them to open the door. They threatened to kill Edmure. His father says, go ahead. It's a great time. But he gloats over his victory, and everyone kind of rolls their eyes while he arrogantly tries to compare himself to Jaime Lannister. How, dude? And he builds some kind of rapport with him. But a furious Jaime coldly reminds Walder his house is held in contempt by the rest of the Riverlands, and that he needs the Lannisters to enforce any of his rule, and that he warns him that if he continues to prove themselves incompetent, here's the thing, how can we back you up? This is not backup. This is us taking over. This is us doing everything for you. And if that's the case, why not just take this for Lannister land and throw you out? But you're incompetent in holding this territory. And the Lannisters aren't going to continue to bail you out because we got another war over here. We got dragons coming. We still got the north. It's stuff going on within. We don't got time for this. And he leaves him speechless because he should. Because this guy thought that through all these back alley dirty deeds, he can somehow finally be looked upon as a lord of legitimacy instead of doing things the proper way. No. Especially a man like Jaime, who holds his honor so high in the sky. Now, next is the part that I think brought a lot of people joy and also brings a different look at Arya. So after Jaime leaves, he's dining on a piece of pie as a serving girl brings him another. Now, pie in this regard is actually more of a meat pie or a chicken pot pie kind of thing. He looks at her and he correctly figures that she's not one of his progeny because she's too pretty and smacks her on the butt. Gives her a look like he's going to do what he does with everyone, discuss them while having sex with them. But his mood turns sour like it always does. And he gets that scowl that only Walder Frey can get on him because he's angry over the tardiness of Black Walder and Lothar. The girl then replies to him, "They're right here, my lord." He kind of squints his eyes. This is a dark room. I don't see them. Well, tell them, what are they doing? Tell them, come here. And she says, "No, they're right here, my lord." And he almost goes into a state of shock when she pulls back the crust and it reveals a finger in there. And he's disgusted because it's like finding a half a worm in an apple because you know you ate the other half, right? So then she pulls off her face, revealing the true identity. It's Arya Stark, wearing a mask she stole from the House of Faces. He attempts to flee, but she pulls him back. He's 90. He can't fight her. And before she slits his throat open, she tells him, the last thing you're going to see is a Stark smiling down on you. And it's poetic. I don't know if you noticed this. And how would she know, right, other than if someone told her? Which they may have. The Hound may have gotten word of it. But he got his throat sliced open the same way Kat got her throat open. And then she kind of watches in satisfaction with a almost grimace, but it was almost like a pleasure. Like it was orgasmic to her getting that revenge. That revenge there was probably the most satisfying for her. And I think it made people accept the next scene even more. Because then we see Frey again. And that's in the beginning of season 7. After murdering Walder, she took his face and impersonated him. And then she holds a feast in his honor with all his sons. She gives a rousing speech, reminiscing over House Frey's victories and everything they've done and where we're going to take this house before offering them a toast, which happens to be poison wine. Now, what I love is where she stopped the girl from drinking. "I'll never waste wine on a damn woman." Because you're not at fault. It's the men here. Think about that. I'm going to kill all the men. Now, Walder's son drink. They all drink, and they drink more and more and more. I refuse to let the woman partake again because they're innocent. They didn't do anything. They're suffering, like Crassus's wives. She then has them cheer as she mentions the red wedding, and they're just happy. They're joyous. And then she goes on to, in a subtle way, mock them by reminding them of how they butchered a pregnant woman, cut the throat of a mother of 5, and slaughtered the Starks after inviting them into their home. Now, right when she says this, they begin to start coughing, and then they start coughing up blood, and then they all die. Arya watches in satisfaction as they die and then removes her mask. But before leaving, she looks at his wife, Kitty, and tells her that if anyone asks what happened here, you tell them the North remembers and winter has come for House Frey. I don't think I got to get into this guy's personality at all. He's cruel, he's arrogant, he's domineering, he's sarcastic, he's lecherous, tyrannical. And those are his good aspects. Right? He thinks little of others and knows others think little of him. He insults most people. And again, he doesn't hold up his end of the bargain. This is the type of guy he is. He's always late to the show, and he's going to do what he wants to do. He is related to the Tullys. He's related to the same people he killed in a way, right? So it shows you how ridiculous and how lecherous he is. However, again, the Red Wedding, while disgusting and a sad affair, they were two people that betrayed one another, and one had the upper hand, and one did not know who their opponent was. Well, I hope you enjoyed Walder Frey. Please go to the Patreon. We have a new episode going up shortly. Our House of the Dragon, I don't know. George R.R. Martin came out the other day. We should be seeing it soon. So you will be seeing 2 additional podcasts coming up. But I appreciate each and every one of you, and I'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to Southside Westeros. We look forward to you coming back and visiting us again. If you want to email us, you can reach us at southsidewesteros@gmail.com. You can also reach us at Southside Westeros at both Instagram, Facebook, and Twitch. We're SS Westeros at Cup of Coffee and Twitter. If you want to donate to the program to keep getting this great content, please donate to our Patreon or our Cash App. Both are Southside Westeros. Valodoharas. And may the Mother bring 7 blessings to you all.